The sound of rain against the car window was the only thing that filled the silence. Daniel Hartley, once a man of ambition and arrogance, now sat in the back seat of his black Mercedes, staring blankly at the old neighborhood he hadn't visited in 5 long years. His assistant had offered to come along, but he refused. This wasn't a business trip. This was something far heavier, something that money, power, or prestige couldn't fix. As the driver pulled up to a small brick house at the corner of Willow Street, Daniel's heart began to race. The house hadn't changed much. Same white curtains, same wooden porch with its peeling paint. But inside those walls lived the woman who once loved him more than anyone ever had, and the woman he'd broken with his pride. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and the power of second chances, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more emotional, real-life stories like this one to the world. When Daniel stepped out, the rain had softened into a mist, coating his dark gray suit in tiny drops. He hesitated at the gate, gripping the iron handle as memories flooded back, the sound of laughter, the warmth of her touch, and that night when everything fell apart. 5 years ago, he had walked out of this house as a self-made millionaire, convinced that success was everything. His company was taking off, investors were waiting, and he told her she wouldn't understand the life he needed to live. She had stood on that porch in tears, asking only for time, but Daniel was too proud to look back. He told himself he'd return one day when everything was perfect. He never realized perfection meant nothing without her in it. The wooden steps creaked under his shoes as he walked up the porch. He noticed a small plant pot near the door, a dying rosebush, fragile and fading. It felt symbolic, almost cruelly so. He took a deep breath and knocked gently. The door opened slightly, revealing the faint sound of a piano playing somewhere inside. Then she appeared. Claire. She looked different, thinner, quieter, but her eyes, those soft hazel eyes, still carried the same kindness he had fallen in love with years ago. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence between them said everything their hearts couldn't. She stood there, holding the door slightly open, her expression unreadable. Daniel's words caught in his throat. He had rehearsed this moment 100 times, but now, standing before her, nothing sounded right. He wanted to tell her he was sorry, that the nights he spent alone in his penthouse didn't feel like victory but punishment, that every time he saw a couple laughing in a cafe or a woman playing with her child in the park, he thought of her. But how do you tell someone you destroyed that kind of peace? Claire finally stepped aside and let him in. The house smelled the same: fresh bread, a faint scent of lavender and thyme. The furniture was simple but neat, though the piano in the corner caught his attention. That piano had been his gift to her years ago, back when their love felt eternal. She had always said music helped her heal, but after he left, she had stopped playing. To hear it now, it almost broke him. As he looked around, he noticed little signs of her life: books on the table, a cup of tea half finished, a framed photo of her standing by the ocean. No photos of him, of course. He didn't deserve to be remembered. Claire moved quietly, offering him tea without saying a word. Her calmness was both comforting and unbearable. He wanted her to scream, to yell, to tell him how much she hated him, but she didn't. She had already moved past the storm. They sat in silence. The ticking of the clock grew louder with each second. Daniel finally gathered the courage to speak, his voice low, almost trembling. He told her that his company had grown beyond anything he imagined, but it all felt meaningless. He had cars, houses, recognition, but no one to share it with. His father had passed away the previous year, and in that moment of loss, he realized how hollow his world had become. "I came to see you," he said softly, "not because I expect forgiveness, but because I wanted to see the only person who ever truly knew me." Claire's gaze didn't shift. She looked down at her cup, her fingers tracing its rim. For 5 years, she had tried to forget him. She built her life from scratch, teaching piano at the local school, volunteering at the library, surrounding herself with quiet things that didn't remind her of heartbreak. But seeing him again had stirred everything. She buried the nights she cried herself to sleep, the mornings she woke up wishing he'd knock on her door. She had spent years in silence, not because she stopped loving him, but because she no longer knew what to say if he ever came back. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped box. He placed it on the table gently, sliding it toward her. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single silver key attached to a ribbon. She looked at him in confusion, and he explained, his voice thick with emotion. The key wasn't to his penthouse or any mansion. It was to the small cottage by the lake they had once dreamed of buying together, the one she used to sketch in her notebooks. He had found it, restored it, and kept it ready for 5 years, waiting, hoping, even when hope felt foolish. "This isn't a bribe," he said quietly. "It's not about money. It's about remembering what we promised each other before everything got lost. I wanted you to have it even if I never see you again." Tears filled Claire's eyes for the first time. She tried to speak, but no words came out. For years, she thought he'd forgotten. She believed he had traded their memories for luxury. But here he was offering her not wealth, not apologies, but something far deeper, acknowledgement. He remembered, and that one gesture, so simple yet profound, shattered the walls she had built around her heart. For a long while, she said nothing. The silence was heavy, but different this time, softer, healing. Finally, she stood, walked to the piano, and began to play. The melody was slow, emotional, and fragile, just like them. Daniel stood motionless, listening as his memories took shape through her music. Each note felt like a confession, a forgiveness, a quiet acceptance that time had not destroyed everything. When she finished, she turned toward him, her expression gentle. There were still years of pain between them, but also a spark of something new, perhaps not love reborn, but understanding. She simply said, "Thank you." It was enough. Daniel left the house with a heavy but peaceful heart. He didn't know what would happen next. Maybe they'd never meet again, or maybe, someday, she'd walk into that lakeside cottage and remember what they once had. As he stood by his car, he looked back one last time. Through the window, he saw her standing at the piano, touching the keys softly as if holding on to the past, but this time, not with sorrow, but grace. 5 years ago, Daniel Hartley walked away from love to chase success. Today, he walked away from success to remember what love truly meant. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind the world of kindness, love, and second chances. And before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe people deserve a second chance at love?